Hi, everybody. Welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace. I'm Vince Mickens with Private Air Media. I'm really looking forward to this show, as I told all the students I was just talking to earlier in preparation to go live. This is going to be a lot of fun to talk to them and hear from them. I think the most exciting thing for me about this is that they are all currently just at the very beginning of their education towards their careers in aviation and aerospace. And they also uh, have come from a variety of backgrounds and things like that. Some pretty cool high schools, and then the colleges that they're going to, but in different routes that they're going to be taking. So hearing about their paths and everything, and of course they are scholarship winners from the Aero Club Foundation of Washington, each winning a $5,000 scholarship towards their education, and I think that that's really, really great. But as I was going through their backgrounds and kind of doing a review of everything, I thought, wow, these kids, they're our future. You know, there's a lot that they're bringing to the table. So looking forward to that and having that conversation for the next hour. Let me start out and tell you a little bit about each one of them. I'll start with Zoe Denito, who grew up in Rockville, Maryland, graduated in 2022 from Richard Montgomery High School. Yes, I have to throw in all three of my daughters went there, so I'm kind of a fan of the Rockets, but a little biased there. She is a second-time scholarship recipient who just completed her first year at the Capital Technology University, which is located in Laurel, Maryland, in pursuit of a bachelor's degree in astronautical engineering. I'm going to talk about that a little later, about astronautical engineering, because it's kind of a cool major and you don't hear about it every day. You hear about aeronautical, you hear about aerospace, but astronautical, that's a whole nother thing. So we'll talk about that. Then we have Patrick Gilbert. He is from Fairfax, Virginia, graduated from the W.T. Woodson High School in Fairfax. He is aspiring to become a professional pilot and is currently pursuing his bachelor's degree in Aeronautical Science at Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana. So you knew it was called Rocky Mountain, it had to be out that way. And he's currently actually in Billings, Montana. So we'll have a lot of fun talking with him. And then we have Kaylin Leake. She is a Washington, D.C. native, I verified, who likes to know about how things work, particularly when it comes to aircraft. She graduated from H.D. Woodson High School in Washington, D.C., and she is pursuing her A&P, otherwise known as Airframe and Power Plant Certification, via the Aviation Maintenance Program at the University of the District of Columbia Community College, where she's going to know how to not only fix planes, but she's going to get her pilot's license and then be able to fix the plane that she flies. And I told her that was awesome. Pretty cool stuff. And then we have Clint. And Clint, I forgot to ask how to pronounce your last name, so I'll let you do that in a minute. But Clint was born in the Republic of Cameroon in West Africa. He's graduating in a couple of weeks from the Phelps Architecture, Construction, and Engineering High School in Washington, D.C. Clint has been accepted to both Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach and Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, but has chosen Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. So congratulations on that, Clint. And then we have Shae Stonemeier. She is a second-time scholarship recipient from Wheaton, Maryland, and she is also a graduate of Wheaton High School, one of the rivals of Richard Montgomery, but we won't get into that right now. And she just completed her first year at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana, in pursuit of a degree in mechanical engineering. And that kind of threw me for a minute, but can make a lot of sense. And we'll talk about that and hear her thoughts on that and why she chose that particular specialty in engineering. And then we have Leake, who you don't see on camera right now because she can do audio only for the first portion of the show. And she told me how to pronounce her last name, and I just can't do it. But anyhow, she initially grew up in Ethiopia, but moved to the Washington, D.C. area with her family when she was 16 years old. She is she's graduating in about a week or so, or two, from the Francis L. Cardozo Education Campus, TransSTEM, which is Transportation Studies Academy in Washington, D.C. Liat just found out that she's been accepted to attend Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, Prescott, Arizona. That's their other campus. So congratulations on that. So as I was mentioning earlier, you can hear from these varied backgrounds, these aspiring young aviation professionals not only are great representation of the future in aviation and space travel, but also diversity in backgrounds, culture, and interest in the industry. Speaking of diverse aviation careers, before we get started, let me stop down as I had mentioned I would do and tell you a little bit about astronautical engineering, which you may or may not be familiar with. It's a kind of a unique major. For those of you who are watching and listening, astronautical engineers are the ones who work on the science and technology of spacecraft regarding how they perform in and outside the Earth's atmosphere. The movie Hidden Figures probably gave a good example of that with the heat shield problem, for those of you who may have seen that movie. And then the fact that you can now watch launches in detail on YouTube live, and they describe every aspect of it and what the technical aspects of the spacecraft are and the rocket that takes them up and things like that, all of the above. So that would also give you a good idea of what I'm talking about. And that's my lesson for today. Class over. No. Then there's, so let me do this. Let me go ahead and kind of get things rolling. And I'm going to start out with you, Zoe, because you have an interesting introduction to aviation. You went on an international flight to Paris and then on to Reunion Island, east of Madagascar. And during that trip, while most kids would be preoccupied with, I don't know, watching movies or playing video games, you were wondering how the plane worked, which I think is pretty darn cool. So you were just like, okay, why does it do this? And why is this happening right now? And why am I hearing the engines either throttle up or throttle back and all of that? So can you share with us how that all translated to you studying astronautical engineering and just how you got interested in aviation?
Well, during my trip, I was so interested in aviation because I've always wondered how airplanes worked. And ever since then, I I was interested in science and I wanted to learn more. And I like
How
being,
old were you when this happened?
so I was 7 years old when it was my first time taking an airplane.
Oh, wow. So you were wondering at 7 why things worked a certain way on the airplane?
Yes, I was very curious.
That's actually that's great. I mean, this at that age to be wondering, oh, how does this work, and wanting to know more about that. So when did that translate into, you know what, I'm going to study this in school?
Well, during my studies in high school, I wanted to learn about technology and how things work. So in my first year in high school, I took Foundations of Technology to learn the basics. And then I wondered, since during the recent years, there were space travel becoming more and more popular. And I wonder if I can participate in aerospace engineering industries to not only create safer and sustainable aircraft, but for spacecraft as well.
So you're into the sustainability of, in other words, the environmental impact, et cetera. That's important to you?
Yes, it is important to me. During my volunteering, I've been volunteering since middle school, and I volunteered for the Montgomery County Environmental Protection Agency in the Division of Solid Waste and Recycling. And during that time, I realized why it's important to take care of the environment and to recycle.
Yeah, so that puts you in an interesting position because being environmentally conscious, but also interested in space and space exploration and what that all entails, that's going to be a great angle for you to deal with as you continue your education and then eventually start getting into the field. So I commend you for that. Let me go to Patrick for a second. Patrick, so your dad was in the Navy, go Navy. Yeah, more biased because I was a Navy guy. And he flew on the P-3 Orion aircraft, which is the air patrol and anti-submarine warfare aircraft. He also took you to a lot of air shows. So when did you realize that aviation was going to be your career focus?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of my dad's experience being around planes and being close to the Naval Air Station in Jacksonville, going to a lot of air shows, and then every summer I would go up to my grandparents' house up in New Hampshire, so we'd have to take a flight, and that was like always like one of my favorite parts was looking forward to the flight.
In what kind of an aircraft?
Probably just like a 737. Yeah, those type of commercial planes.
Okay, got you. So how old were you when all of this was starting to, come into play for you in terms of
Ooh,
your determining what you wanted to do?
yeah, I don't know. I definitely figured it out like pretty young. That I definitely had a very strong passion for aviation. Um, just everything about that. So yeah, I'd say maybe 6 or 7 or so. So very young, and it just kind of stuck with me throughout. So it's like, I going through high school, it's like, yeah, I'm pretty confident I want to go fly. So
Yeah, so you're another one that started very, very young. I do have to ask you this though. I know a lot of aviation-centric universities and colleges. Rocky Mountain College in Billings, Montana. How'd that
Mhm.
come into the picture?
So it kind of happened through COVID. My junior year, we were allowed to go. Some of us were allowed. Well, yeah, we were allowed to go in person, but it was kind of opt-in. And at that point, the classes were significantly smaller than what I was used to, and I had found that that was a better kind of way for me to learn with just smaller classrooms. So I kind of was looking for smaller schools, and just so happened that Rocky Mountain College popped up, and they have a 141 aviation program. Came in, toured the aviation program, and just felt like the right place.
Yeah. Hey, that's important. You want to feel like you're in a comfortable environment. Kaylin, like Zoe, you seem very fascinated about how aircraft work. We were talking about it a little bit before the show started, which as I mentioned, think is very cool. And it's after that, I think it's the fact that you want to know how to fix the aircraft that you fly. You don't often hear that. So that's a great direction to go in. But how did all of this come about, and particularly being interested in aviation maintenance and the mechanics of how to actually work on an aircraft?
Yeah, so actually everything just kind of hit me at one point, like literally right before I enrolled into college as a freshman, going into college as a sophomore now. But I don't, I really don't know where it came from. I won't say I've always been fascinated with planes, but my fascination just started to grow more and more. As I see planes just always in the skies, right above DC, as Reagan National Airport is not too far from me. And I just became more curious as to how planes get up in the sky, how they stay in the sky, and how they just safely transport hundreds of passengers to and from various destinations. Um, Prior to me enrolling in college, I thought I was going to be majoring in um, mortuary science. I'm sorry, I couldn't find a word. But yes, I thought I was going to be majoring in mortuary science. And then I said, no, I think I want to go to the Air Force. I said, no, the Air Force, well, airplanes. And then it just went from there.
Mortuary science to flying
Mortuary science, yes.
and working on airplanes. I've heard a lot of different things in terms of people want to go after. That's a new one for me. So so instead of no, I'm not going to go there. Anyhow, no, so that's what so where did the wanting to also fly them come in? Because I can understand you wanting to like learn how to fix them, take them apart and things like that, but where did the wanting to fly that as well?
I have a very supportive mother. So she just constantly pushes me. I never thought about flying an airplane, but she found an opportunity. She said, "Hey, let's go flying. You should be a pilot." I said, "What? Who?" Um, so we found an opportunity. I forgot where we went, or who we flew with. Positive Attitude Aviation. That's what I flew with.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know what a rudder was. I didn't know what an elevator was. I didn't know anything. We just hopped right on in. I didn't sign any papers, any waivers. We just hopped right in. I said, "I'm going to be the pilot. I don't know what I'm doing." He said, "You good. I'll show you." And I actually had a stunt pilot as an instructor. Um, and I honestly thought that I was going to hate it. I've been on a commercial airplane once to fly to Puerto Rico, and it was okay. It was okay, but to actually fly a plane, that has never dawned on me. So after I actually did it, it became more of an interest, and then, as I said, I just became more fascinated with airplanes, and I love it. I wouldn't trade my major for any other major.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I'm a little biased about it, but yeah, something about flying a smaller airplane is a lot of fun. So I can see where you would have that interest. And when you're sitting in the back of a large airliner, you don't always necessarily get the feel, although one of you was inspired by that. So it just depends on the individual. Let me go to Clint. Clint, you said in your bio that your ultimate goal was to be an international airline pilot, which is great. And I'm not trying to influence your aviation career direction, but you also noted that you've had a lot of exposure to the industry, so it's showing you a broader picture of what the possibilities are. Not that being an international, in fact, I know several international airline pilots who really enjoy what they do. But you also went to NBAA's convention last year in Orlando last October, which I was there, by the way, too. And actually, full disclosure, I worked for NBAA for a little over a decade, so I'm very familiar with that convention in particular. And you know, the the thing that NBAA to me brings out and offers to young people like yourself is another area besides being an airline pilot. So there's the opportunity to be a corporate pilot or fly charters or anything private for that matter, as business aviation and things like that. Um, Private jets, turboprops, helicopters, advanced air mobility, all of that takes place. And then the other thing that NBAA has is their young professionals program, better known as YoPro, which is a great opportunity to really get to know more about the industry and to network with others that have the same interests this year in October. And the third day is always primarily dedicated to youth. It's dedicated to aspiring young aviation professionals. And you can, as you saw there, Clint, you can get a taste of everything in terms of that world of aviation, including about 100 aircraft on display out at a nearby airport that you can literally walk up to, walk in, sit in the cockpit, sit in the cabin, and check out and things like that. Okay, NBA, you need to send me a check. I just promoted you guys really well. No, Clint, tell us about you and your aspirations in aviation.
All right, so I got really inspired to become a pilot when I was real young. My first time flying a plane, well, not flying a plane, but getting a plane and getting to travel to, I believe it was South Africa. Um, it was like, why is it so loud? Like I want to fly this, and doing the turbulence, it was like I'm not scared, but like I want to see what's happening outside the window. So it was always like a dream for me to fly. And a couple months ago, I started working on my private pilot license. So it was really exciting. But before that, like I said, Aero Club Foundation sponsored me to go down to Orlando, Florida for the NBA race conference. And I got to meet all these interesting people. I spoke to the manager of Rolls-Royce, the engine company, and we're still in touch till today. He still give me all these opportunities and telling me about everything in the industry. So it just brought in my mind.
Yeah, so that all of that kind of got your interest in there. What do you think you want to do with it now as you pursue your education with it?
So
Are you
Um,
still interested in being an airline pilot?
yes, sir. I don't
Okay.
know. I feel like being a pilot is what it is for me. I don't think going into like the engineering stuff, like the mechanical part of aeronautical is for me.
You say it is?
I say it's not, I don't feel like it
It's
is for
not
me.
for you.
So
Got you. Yeah, yeah. Shae, you grew up in Wheaton, Maryland. You're studying engineering at Purdue University, and you're part of the electric vehicle racing team. You have to tell us about that. So should we expect to kind of see you working on like a rover for the moon or Mars or something like that?
That would be pretty cool. Um, I think so you mentioned that I did mechanical engineering because Purdue does have an Aero Astro program. And I made that decision very deliberately because throughout high school, I was like super convinced that I wanted to do aerospace engineering or something of that sort. And I participated in Civil Air Patrol, and they have a great aerospace education program. And I interned at Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab, and like there, I actually was able to work on a project within the Europa Clipper mission, which was very awesome. Um, However, Purdue has a first year engineering program, so I didn't have to select my like specialized engineering major right away. And my first semester, like college hit me, and it was very difficult. And I kind of went back and forth between a couple different options about what I wanted to do. And there was just a lot of information, and I wasn't totally sure what was the best fit for me. So I decided to stick with mechanical engineering, and in doing so, it gives me some broader options. And then I found the electric vehicle club, and I've gotten super interested in like electrification of transportation, and that can be um, cars, planes, and then space travel would be awesome too. And just figuring out how that can apply to where our technology is at the moment, and see what's out there.
So where did this all come from? I mean, how long ago did you determine this was something of interest to you?
I think engineering was something that always spoke to me a little bit. I have been involved in very and it was just always something that like it was challenging but super engaging, and it made my brain feel good, and it was very interesting. Um And especially since I've gone to college, I've just been putting a lot of work into figuring out exactly what route and what options I have available to me to like to fulfill my specific interests.
Yeah. Leah, you could say that your bloodline is aviation's in your bloodline because your dad is a computer program for an airline, your uncle is a pilot, and you're well on your way to becoming a professional pilot. Where did this dream begin for you? And by the way, Liat is with us, but on audio only for the time being, because she's in transit. Liat?
Yeah. So, like you said, my dad's he's works for an airlines, and my uncle is a pilot. And I also didn't mention that my aunt is a hostess. So, like, pretty
Oh wow,
much,
everybody's in
yeah.
aviation.
Yes. And like I've been flying since I was a little kid. I mentioned that I moved to the United States when I was 16. So that's like last year. I'm 17 turning 18. But before that, growing up there, my dad like would always talk about like his career, and like I had a lot of information like through him, and I was always fascinated by it. And but like my mom, she lives here, like in the US. She used to live here before I moved. And so we'd like come to visit her every summer. So there was like a lot of flying involved, right? And my story is kind of similar to Zoe's, except I wasn't the one who started asking questions. My dad was like, how do you think planes work? Like, how do you think something this heavy carrying this many people? It's flying in the air. And I was like, I don't know. And so like I've always been fascinated by it, and I like started researching, studying about it. I'm taking aerospace engineering right now. Before that, like I used to go to like the airlines where my dad worked, and he used to like there were these trips they would arrange where they'd show you the simulators, stuff they do, like the different jobs there. And I even got to talk to a lot of pilots because, you know, my uncle, my dad connected. So I always liked the job. I knew a lot about it. So I knew that was what I wanted to do.
Yeah, simply put. And I'm sorry, your audio is a little bit rough, but hopefully we'll be able to clear that up in a bit. But we did pretty much get the gist of it. And it's kind of neat how, you know, so many members of your family are in the aviation industry. So the pilot of the family, is that airline pilot?
What?
I was saying, I think it's no, not your dad, your uncle that's an airline. Is he an airline pilot?
Yes, he's an airline pilot for Ethiopian Airlines.
Ah, okay. Got you. And is your dad also with Ethiopian Airlines?
Yes.
Okay.
He
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I was gonna say he initially also wanted to be a pilot, but that's kind of a long story. So I'll save it for a different
Oh,
time.
there's a lot of us that have long stories about the you know, changing in the middle of a career desire. So, but thank you for sharing that. So let me open it up to everybody, because my other question is, and you know, Kaylin, you actually started it off for us when you were talking about how supportive your mom was about, you know, your interest in aviation, and how she really kind of pushed you with that. And I'd just like to hear from any of you and all of you about that in terms of your parents' involvement with your career. And the reason I bring that up is because aviation sometimes can be foreign to parents when it comes to talking about it as a career. Most people know about being an airline pilot, maybe an aircraft mechanic, but most parents, and I can give a perfect example. I know a mom who we actually served on the parent teacher student association together, and I ran into her in a grocery store one day a few years back, and she said, you know, I was like, "Oh, how are your kids?" And she said, "Yeah, my son is thinking about aerospace engineering." And of course, I gave her the, you know, I was like, "Well, when were you going to call me and ask me about that, since you know what I do in the industry?" And you know, the thing that stood out to me the most is said she didn't know anything about the industry, and which was even more why I said, "Why didn't you call me?" But and so she was trying to figure out, well, how can I help him, guide him, and things like that that most parents want to figure out when their kid says they want to do something. So can you guys share with me your perspective on that, and your relationship with your folks, and how they have, you know, tried to support you, or where they are with you about being in this industry or entering this industry?
So my parents don't really know a lot about aviation, but they do support me a lot because we know becoming a pilot is like extremely expensive. So I know my parents help me financially a lot, and they support me. They have all these resources for me. They try to find like people I could get in touch with. So I really appreciate them.
Yeah, and that brings up the whole scholarship aspect. All of you are scholarship recipients from the Aero Club of Washington, which Aero Club Foundation of Washington, and the Aero Club Foundation and the Aero Club of Washington have done a great job just advocating for the industry, and particularly the foundation, in supporting you know, young students like yourselves to to help you with the financial part, because it is expensive to get started, and really any aspect of it, whether it's, you know, of course, being a pilot is probably one of the most expensive aspects, but all the other areas in pursuing a degree, et cetera, and so forth, can be costly. So it's great to have organizations like the Aero Club Foundation supporting that. Anybody else in terms of their parents' involvement or knowledge of or support of?
Well, I already mentioned that my dad is pretty involved.
Yes.
My mom, not so much, because like, you know, where I come from, like the culture, and you know, she thinks it's not something like she's not sexist, but she doesn't think it's something that a woman like should do, like if she had the choice. Because you know, there's a lot of traveling involved, and if you like want to like settle down, then it's gonna be like difficult. So she prefers if I like made a different career choice, but obviously I really like the job. So yeah.
No, that you bring up a really good point about that, and that's not uncommon, by the way. And also, you know, so I recently did a show about aviation moms, moms who are in aviation, most of them pilots, and we talked about that, and they talked about how they handle balancing flying and work and things like that. As a matter of fact, one, she and her husband are both airline pilots for two different airlines. And so, and they have two kids, two young kids. And so juggling that has its challenges, but they talked about the different ways that they communicate and they plan and they deal with it. But the thing that stood out to me the most was both of them are very passionate about aviation and about being pilots. So they're like, well, we're just going to have to figure this out because I don't want to do anything else and that type of thing. So yeah, but that's a really good point. Yeah. Any of you, Patrick, Zoe, any of you guys have any perspective on that?
Well, because of my dad's position flying on the P3, his position was kind of like the weapons and like sonobuoys on the plane. So he worked very closely with the pilot. So he did know like a decent amount of pilot type stuff. And I clearly had the passion for it, and both parents were supportive of trying to find a place, Aviation Adventures in Manassas. So I started my private pilot's license like in high school. My mom did ask me like quite a few times, like, "You sure this is what you want to do? You sure this is what you want to do?" I mean, it is a pretty big investment, and yeah, I was confident. I'm like, no, this is what I want to do. I'm not gonna back out of it. So uh, they're both really supportive of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. Shae, Zoe, how about you guys?
Well, my father told me that my grandfather had a passion in aviation. Like he had a job as a, well, not really as a pilot, but as a person in the control towers in airports. And
Oh, okay. An air traffic controller.
yes, an air traffic controller. But I've never knew my grandparents, but my parents supported me in education. And with the support of this scholarship, I am able to volunteer in nonprofit organizations. And in one of them, in the Every Girl Can Learn Institute, I get to be a role model for young girls, including girls of color, that it is possible to have a passion in the STEM field and STEAM fields as well.
Sure. How did you find out about the scholarship with the Aero Club Foundation?
Well, during my college application process in my senior year in high school at Richmond Montgomery, there was an email about the Aero Club Foundation scholarship, and I was curious. So I applied because I was applying for scholarships because colleges are expensive. And I found out from a phone call that I got accepted, and I had a 4.0 GPA, 4.7 GPA in high school. And my mother is really supportive of me in education and volunteering so that I get to learn and continue to grow my knowledge.
Yeah. Patrick, how about you? How did you find out about the scholarship opportunity?
I think it was probably for my dad. He was, I mean, he still is like doing a lot of research on different types of scholarships. like related to aviation, and he's been a very big support in helping apply to a whole bunch of them. And I was just really, really fortunate to have won this one twice now. Like very fortunate.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that though, because as great as it is that all of you have received a scholarship from the Aero Club Foundation, there are a ton of scholarships out there specific to aviation, to STEM, aerospace, etc., that are available to apply for. And unfortunately, and I found this out of specifically doing shows about scholarship opportunities, is that a lot of young people don't take advantage of it. They just don't pursue them. And there's enough out there to go after, and a lot of it just ends up sitting on the table for and rolling over to the next year or whatever the case may be. So you bring up a really good point about that. Your dad's real smart to really help you find some other scholarships that might be available. And most of the organizations in aviation have some type of scholarship availability or program. Women in Aviation International has a bunch. Women in Corporate Aviation, AOPA has a bunch. MBAA, and I could go on with most of the aviation alphabets, EAA, et cetera. They all have scholarship opportunities towards either, flight training or towards advanced flight training, towards your education in aviation, et cetera, and so forth. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. Shae, how about you? How'd you find out about the Aero Club Foundation scholarship opportunity?
To the best of my memory, I believe it was our college application counselor at school. They have a big list of scholarships, and this was one of them. What I didn't realize right away was that this was a repeat scholarship that you can get up to 4 times, which is more unusual when it comes to getting scholarships, so it has been a very amazing opportunity to have.
Yeah, that's a good point too, that it is a repeat scholarship. I didn't know you could get it up to 4 times. That's, if you're going to school for 4 years, bingo.
Yeah.
So, Clint, how about you?
So I think I had issues finding scholarships because I'm not a citizen yet. So I walked to my NAF director and she told me about the scholarship and I applied for it. I got a phone call one day while I was driving. They were like, "You got the scholarship?" I was, "Oh my God." And
It's
so
good to know you didn't crash from excitement. No, congratulations on that. That's cool to hear how that came about. So, Kaylin, how about you?
Oh, I actually heard about this scholarship. One day I was in school and the director of the building, he's also a professor for the senior class, a professor for the senior class. He pulled me in his office and he told me to check my email because he had sent me a scholarship opportunity. And he wasn't sending it to all of the students because, of course, not everything is for everyone. But I guess it's because he's seeing the potential in me. So I'm very grateful that he did. And I'm also, I'm actually waiting to sign up for another scholarship for AWAM, the Association for Women in Aviation Maintenance. So
Oh,
I'm definitely
nice.
excited.
And there you go, another aviation alphabet. No, that's really great. So, the parent in me is going to come out a little bit because the next thing I want to ask you guys about is what your plans are in terms of where you think you want to go. Several of you, a couple of you are getting ready to start college, and several of you already have done your first year. So let me just open it up to you, and maybe we can start with you, Liat, and tell us about what it is you think you'd like to do. Some of you've kind of touched on it already with telling about your backgrounds and your passion for the industry, but I'd still like to hear from each of you about what your plans are.
So I kind of already hinted at it. I want to be an international commercial pilot. I do like traveling and I love the job, so that seems like a great fit.
Perfect match, right? Do you want to end up flying one of the big jumbles, the Airbus A330 or Boeing 78 or
Yeah,
777, things like that?
Yep, the big ones, the Boeing 787, the Boeing 737.
Yeah.
Boeing.
I know Ethiopian Airlines has those for all of the international flying that it does. So you've probably
Yeah,
had a little bit of exposure to that too.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Shae, how about you?
For now, I'm gonna see kind of what opportunities come up at career fairs and whatnot. Um, as I said earlier, this past year I've been looking at a ton of different options. One program that I've noticed is available to me is our sustainable engineering minor, which is something that I definitely want to look into a bit more. Or there are a couple of certificates. But with that, I am looking for different internships to see what kind of working environment works for me and what kind of working environment doesn't work, and just kind of going to go from there.
Yeah. Speaking of sustainability, Zoe, that reminds me of you in our earlier conversation with this. How about you? What is it that you think you'll want to do?
Well, after I graduate college, my goal is to achieve a pilot's license to learn how to fly an airplane, kind of like Kayla. And I wanted to have a profession in the aerospace industry where I can help engineers design sustainable and safer aircraft and spacecraft. And
Good.
it's really important for engineers to be mindful that we're not only designing safer vehicles for people, but they have to be safer for the environment as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I have a couple things to say about that. I'll come back to you on it. I might have to go talk to you offline too about it too. But Patrick?
Um, I think just like anything flying, definitely commercial airlines is up there, but honestly, I'm just gonna like try and get all my ratings, get the credits for the restricted ATP, and just kind of see what opportunities open up, whether that be corporate or airlines or maybe even like Air National Guard or something.
Got you. Kaylin?
So in regards to my plan, we're jumping into a really big pool here. There's a lot that I do want to cover just in regards to aviation itself. But I do want to start off by obtaining my AMP license. And then immediately after that, I want to get my degree, my associate's degree in aviation maintenance technology. And then after that, I want to work towards my pilot's license, preferably a private pilot. Yeah.
Yeah.
But basically, I just want to know everything there is to know about aviation, airplanes, not so much helicopters. I'm sorry for the helicopter lovers. But I'm more fascinated with just airplanes, big, small, all sizes.
Have you been up in a helicopter?
No.
Okay. Before you rag on the helicopter a little bit, you need to go up in one. It's a pretty
Okay.
cool machine. There's much to me, there is much fun to fly as an airplane. So even though, most of my flying has been in airplanes, I absolutely love helicopters. And so I'm a little biased with it, not to pick on you, but until you try it,
I'm looking
don't
forward
knock
to it.
it.
I'm definitely looking forward to it.
You have to give it a shot. Clint, how about you?
So like I said, I want to be an international airline pilot. I really want to work for Air France because when I flew their planes, well, when I was a passenger in their planes, it was like a real comfortable, smooth, and nice experience. So, and I speak French like as a first language, so it's like really passion to fly for them one day.
Yeah. So have you been watching the French Open at all? Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry. We're talking about aviation. I just derailed. No, I'm just having a little bit of fun with you guys. I told you I'm a typical parent, so I'm corny and I derail once in a while and things like that. So a couple of things that I wanted to just and I'll just talk about in general with what you guys are all pursuing, and that is obviously one of the great things you can do is to try to immerse yourself in the industry as much as possible. A couple of ways to do that is one through being involved in the different associations. So in addition to the Aero Club Foundation and the Aero Club of Washington, you know, the ones that I mentioned before, Women in Aviation International, Women in Corporate Aviation, NBAA, the National Business Aviation Association, AOPA, Aircraft Owner and Pilots Association, EAA, Experimental Aircraft Association, et cetera. They all have opportunities to either be an intern or to volunteer or just to get involved with them. And I think for your various areas, the more you can do that, especially if you want to absorb everything that you could possibly know. And by the way, I don't know why I didn't mention NASA, JPL have some really great internship programs. As a matter of fact, I've talked to a number of students that have gone from being an intern to being a full-time employee. And you know, also don't be afraid to make a shift in your goals within the industry. So a perfect example, I had a student on, or a young lady, it's not a student anymore, but a young lady on recently who got a degree in space weather, space meteorology. Yeah, basically space weather, from University of Michigan. And she always had kind of architecture in the background. And the short of it is, she Googled, you know, NASA, space, architecture, et cetera, and found out that there was such a thing as a space architect for NASA. They're the ones that designed the habitats for like the space station, the moon, and Mars. So she went and got her graduate degree there. And by the way, at the University of Houston, Cullen School of Engineering, it's the only one in the country that even offers a degree in that. And now, as a result, while she was doing that, she was an intern. This is my whole point. She was an intern at NASA Johnson Space Center, and now she is working as a space architect at Johnson Space Center, and she's working on habitats for Mars. So, of course, I asked her if she would ever go to Mars, and she said, not on the first trip. So anyhow, so there are a lot of different opportunities through the associations and things like that that you can do. And also there are opportunities with aviation companies. So for example, Kaylin, if you were interested in, I mean, with what you're interested in, particularly on the maintenance side of things, you know, there are several of the companies that, for example, Pratt and Whitney and folks like that, that have facilities here that you can pursue to find out more about it and things like that, and either try to get an internship or things like that as you're going through school. So those are just some examples. And I was trying to remember, was it Shae that was just talking about? No, not Shae. It was Zoe. Zoe, you were talking about sustainability. Airbus is a really good. Airbus Americas, their offices here, that's a real big push for them. And there's actually some people there that offline I can put you in touch with that I think would be really good for your career in terms of your interests. Most of the aviation companies are now really looking at sustainability. They're getting a little pressure about it from an environmental standpoint, but they're also wanting to do it because it just makes sense. Textron Aviation is another example of that. Boeing is another example of that, et cetera. So I have said this, and I say it almost every show. The opportunities are wide open in this industry, particularly now. Somebody brought up about the fact that space travel and everything has picked up momentum. For those of us who've been around long enough, like myself, we haven't seen this type of momentum in space travel and space exploration and in aviation in general for probably, particularly on the aerospace side, for a good 50 years. This was stuff that it was like this in the 60s and early 70s, and now it's back again full force with a lot going on. So you know, there's a great opportunity for all of you to be in this industry and do some things. As we kind of close things out and wrap up, I just would like to go hear from each of you. This is really important. So a lot of the young people like yourself, your peers who are watching this or who will watch it at another time, and their parents and advisors and counselors, et cetera, and so forth, one of the important things for them to hear, but particularly your peers, is what your suggestions or advice would be about their interest in pursuing a career in aviation and aerospace. So I'll start with you, Shae, and just tell us what your thoughts are about that. What kind of advice you would give anybody who would say, "Hey, I'm looking at wanting to, go that direction."
I think my biggest piece of advice would just like Google stuff. Do so much research about the programs that are available, different opportunities and career paths that you can take, and really truly do the effort to find something that you think works for yourself, because all of us here have stated our interest to go into the aviation industry, but we are for the most part taking pretty different paths to do so, because we have found different programs and different methods that work for us. And like, the options are out there, and if you need to reach out to someone and ask questions, there are people who are always willing to answer them. And like at the foundation, there's been an amazing amount of support for just people, the members of the foundation, seeing younger people interested in this industry, and how much work that they're willing to put in to help us figure out how to apply our skills in a way that makes us happy and feel accomplished and all of that. So do your research, don't be afraid to ask questions, and you should be able to find something that works for you.
Fair enough. Liat, as an immigrant from Ethiopia and coming here recently at a high school age, etc., what kind of advice would you give?
Is it to like immigrants like me or everyone?
No, just in general, and you could just give general advice. I just was pointing it out because it's a different process. I've known others who have come from other countries and have to immerse themselves here in aviation and in getting their education and everything, and they go through a little bit of a different process. But whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, I would just say, it is like, it's a lot of hard work. It is a commitment. But like, if you're sure it's what you want to do, and I know it's hard to like be sure what you want to do, which is why, like Shae said, I would like research, ask people who are actually in the industry. There are a lot of networking events. That's actually how I found out about the Aero Club scholarship, through one of their luncheons. And I met like a female pilot who's actually from Ethiopia. And, like, go to different events that it doesn't have to be that, but similar to that, and talk to people. And, when you get to know about the job, if you're sure if that's what you really want to do, then go for it. Cause yeah.
Cause yeah. Zoe?
It's important to apply to as many scholarships as you can, because you may never know if you would be accepted or not, and it's better to apply to as many as possible. Like, the more the better. And it's important to continue education, because it's really important, and to take as many opportunities as you can. Like me recently, I'm currently an intern at the U.S. Naval Academy through the Maryland Space Grant Consortium program through my school. And at first I wasn't sure if I would get accepted, but it's good not to doubt, because if you doubt, you would miss the opportunity. So it's best to apply, even if you're not sure.
Absolutely. Kaylin, how about you? What advice would you give?
The advice that I would give anybody in a general perspective, apply yourself, persevere, stay committed. And if you are going to get into this industry, just give it your all. This is not the type of industry that you would jump in and just cheat your way through or Google your answers through. You have to think that there are literally hundreds of people whose lives are on the line in regards to commercial aviation. So just stay committed, know what you're getting into, and safety is a number one priority.
Well said. Clint?
I'll say take your time, like find out if it's really what you want. But I also say start at a young age, because from what I heard, it's easier when you start young, because you just get like grow into it. So I'll say start at a young age. Don't procrastinate. You don't have to wait till you're 18 to get a private pilot license. You can start at 16. So yes, my advice.
Yeah. And Patrick.
Yeah, just kind of the same general things. Like definitely reach out to people, take advantage of scholarships. For the pilot side, like look at different programs that are around. See if you can take like an introductory flight. Really make sure it's something you want to commit yourself to. And if you do commit yourself to it, like fully commit. Don't half commit and then kind of back out after spending a ton of money, because flight training is expensive. So you definitely want to fully commit to that and know that this is what you want to get into.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. You know, and I want to thank all of you for being available, all six of you, and taking the opportunity to have this conversation and to share what you're doing and what you're looking forward to doing career-wise, particularly in aviation and aerospace, with my audience. And also, I really, really wish all of you the best. I think each of you are impressive young people and impressive students who are truly representing our future in terms of the next generation in this industry. And I think you're all going to do really great because all of you have the passion for it, and point taken about taking it seriously, because it is something you really have to love in order to enjoy. But it also is something that once you get in this industry, probably won't leave it. You know, even people, if they don't end up doing what they originally thought they were going to do, they find something else. But it is an industry that kind of just sucks you in and just won't let you go, which is quite fine with me. So again, thank you everybody for that. And I just have to throw this in there. So Kaylin, I actually got a text from a helicopter pilot that says, yeah, how come you guys didn't talk more about helicopters? Your fault, Kaylin. No, I'm just kidding. I'm glad you actually made a comment about it, so then I was able to at least mention it. Yeah, all aspects of flying are great. Helicopter flying, because of the type of machine it is and everything, a lot of people don't understand it, and so they don't think it maybe is as safe, for example, as an airplane. Actually, a helicopter is as safe as an airplane because it has the ability, if it loses its engine, to land safely. So it in what we call auto rotation, but it is there's some great opportunities in it. As a matter of fact, I recently just talked to a group of helicopter pilots who all have done some and are doing some amazing. Speaking of which, they got scholarships to advance their helicopter rating so that they could even do more in their industry. And they do everything from flying people to offshore oil wells to medevac, police, you name it. There's an opportunity in it, and it's another great aspect of the aviation industry. So I have to throw my little, and he's also a Navy guy, so I had to add that in there for his sake. He's probably laughing right now and saying thank you. So listen, best of luck to all of you, and I really wish you guys the best. I will be offline, speaking with a few of you offline to make a couple suggestions specific to your different areas. But thank you guys for being a part of the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Vince.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely
you.
a pleasure. All things aviation and aerospace, that's us, is a presentation of Private Air Media. If you haven't already subscribed, I would ask that you please do so. It is a show that is designed to really give you guys as much perspective as possible about the opportunities in the industry and all of the different things you can do. It is a joy to have basically students on who are transitioning or have transitioned from high school to college and are focused on careers in this industry, and for you to be able to hear directly from them how they're going about it and what their goals are. So again, it was great to be able to do this show. Until next time, stay safe, take care. If you're a pilot, safe flying and blue skies. All the best to everyone.